Možemo početi. Doći će nam vjerojatno još neki studenti koji završavaju sada sa nastavom, ali da započnemo u vrijeme kao što smo se dogovorili. Poštovani prorektore, vaša ekscelencijo, poštovani pročelnici, studentici, studenti, dragi prijatelji, poštovani nastavnici, sve vas srdačno pozdravljam ovdje u dvorani Blaženog Alojzije Stepinca. U akademskoj godini 2023-2024 započinjemo s jednim novim nizom predavanjima veleposlanika imenovanih u Republici Hrvatskoj. Niz otvara naš današnji gost, veleposlanik Republike Finske, njegova ekscelencija Kalle Kankaanpää, koji se rado odazvao našem pozivu. Your Excellency, we are very happy to have you here among us. Welcome. I ja bih sad prije nego dam riječ našem prorektoru za znanost, profesoru Antoloviću. Htjela bih vam zapravo predstaviti današnjeg gosta, a onda će profesor Antolović održati jedan kratki pozorni govor u ime rektora Tanjića i nakon toga slijedi predavanje veleposlanika na engleskom jeziku. Naš današnji gost, Kalle Kankaanpää, je veleposlanik Republike Finske u Hrvatskoj, Svete stolice i Bosni i Hercegovini od travnja 2021. godine. Upravo nam je rekao da je došlo vrijeme pandemije i da je od tada ovdje kod nas u Zagrebu. On je došao iz Ministarstva vanjskih poslova Finske u Helsinkiju, gdje je radio kao direktor jedinice za sjevernu Europu. U Finskom ministarstvu vanjskih poslova također je radio u jedinici za Rusiju i zauzimao je položaj koji se odnosi na regionalnu suradnju. Njegova karijera u diplomatskoj službi uključuje radna mjesta u veleposlanstvu Finske u Vilniusu i u stalnom predsjedništvu Finske pri Europskoj uniji u Briselu, gdje je također radio kao nacionalni stručnjak u Europskoj službi za vanjsko djelovanje. Kankaanpää je rođen u Helsinkiju, Finske 1968. Diplomirao je na sveučilištu u Turku 1998. Kao magistar političkih znanosti, oženjen je i otac troje djece. Usvojio finski materinji jezik, govorio švedski, engleski i francuski, uživao u sportovima na otvorenom, biciklizmu, trčanju i skijaškom trčanju. U ime rektora profesora Tanjića pozdravnu riječ reći će naš prorektor za znanost profesor Antolović. Izvolite.
Poštovani, dobar dan, želim svima. Srdačno vas pozdravljam u ime našeg rektora profesora dr. Željka Tanjića, koji se ovaj tjedan nalazi u Poljskoj u posjeti, na konferenciji u posjetima Papskom sveučilištu Ivana Pavla II. U Krakovu i posjeti katoličkom sveučilištu u Lublinu. Hrvatsko katoličko sveučilište od svojih početaka potiče međunarodnu suradnju, kao što znamo, sa mnogim katoličkim sveučilištima u svijetu, međunarodnim organizacijama, znanstvenim institucijama, tako i sa veleposlanstvima radnih zemalja i veleposlanicima akreditiranim u Republici Hrvatskoj. Kako bismo mi intenzivirali suradnju s veleposlanstvima, odlučili smo u ovoj akademskoj godini 2023-2024 započeti s predavanjima koja će održati veleposlanici. Cilj ovih naših susreta je bolje upoznavanje zemalja, kulture, njihovih visokoobrazovnih sustava, ali i aktualnih tema s kojima se pojedine države susreću. Na tragu rečenog pozivnicu smo uputili našem današnjem gostu, njegovoj ekscelenciji, gospodinu Kalleu Kankaanpääu, koji se rado odazvao, na čemu mu od srca zahvaljujemo. Ovom prigodom bih htio istaknuti da od Finske možemo naučiti puno toga. Finska je poznata kao zemlja od 1000 jezera, iako za Hrvatsku kažemo da je zemlja od 1000 i više otoka, u kojoj se gotovo u Finskoj kao i u Argentini iznimno cijeni i pleše tango. Ja to osobno nisam znao, ali evo ga informacija koja je vrijedna. I u izvješću o sreći u svijetu koje od 2012. objavljuje Ujedinjeni narodi, Finska za 6. godinu za redom svrstava u sam vrh najsretnijih zemalja svijeta kada se kao kriterij za sreću uzmu 6 ključnih faktora, a to su društvena podrška, prihod, zdravlje, sloboda, darežljivost i izostanak korupcije. Finska je poznata po svom obrazovanju. Na testovima programa za međunarodnu ocjenu učeniku PISA iz matematike, čitanja i znanosti, Finska se uvijek ističe kao zemlja koja ima odlične rezultate, što je svrstava među najbolje zemlje u obrazovanju u Europi i jednu od najjačih u svijetu. Finski školski sustav je iznimno dobar u osiguravanju da učenici završe srednju školu i to u visokom postotku, 93%. Finskih učenika maturira u strukovnim školama i gimnazijama, što je značajno više nego mnogim drugim razvijenim zemljama. Vrijedi istaknuti kako finski učenici koji završe srednju školu znaju da će država platiti cjelokupno njihovo obrazovanje nakon mature na jednom od 8 finskih državnih sveučilišta ili politehničkih instituta za strukovne maturante. Čak 66% Finaca nastavlja više obrazovanje, što je jedna od najviših stopa Europske unije. Od 4. travnja ove godine Finska je postala 31. članica NATO, a kao zemlja poznata je istekla međunarodni ugled upravo u mirovnom posredovanju i nedavno preminuli bivši finski predsjednik Martti Ahtisaari dobitnik je Nobelove nagrade za mir 2008. godine. Govoreći o mirovnom posredovanju rekao je: "To je moj vječni optimizam. Ja vjerujem kako se svi sukobi mogu riješiti. Što pokušavamo postići? Ljudska prava, dobro zdravstvo, istina, pomirenje te pravedno društvo, društvo ravnopravnosti." Sukobi koji, nažalost, svjedočimo u svijetu potiču nas na promišljanje o miru i izgradnji mira kao osnovi života na našem planeti. Upravo o izgradnji mira, ali i o pogledima na ekumenska nastojanja pape Franje, govorit će nam i današnji gost, veleposlanik gospodin Kalle Kankaanpää. Your Excellency, on behalf of our rector, Rector Tanjic, the vice rectors, professors, and students, we wish you a warm welcome to Catholic University of Croatia. We appreciate your effort and time and hope that your lecture will inspire us in many ways to reconsider what peace. Dobro nam došli, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Mr. Vice Rector, ladies and gentlemen, dear students of the Catholic University of Croatia, here today and all you over to YouTube. I'm very happy to be here. This is a great honor for me and brings me nice memories from the time when I was still a student. I graduated from my alma mater, my home university, 25 years ago in spring 1998. I studied in Turku in southwest Finland. I have now been working for the Finnish Foreign Ministry for 25 years, so I started the same year at the ministry that I had graduated from university. And I have to say that when I joined the Finnish Foreign Ministry 25 years ago, the world looked very different from what it looks now. I remember from the time the optimism we all were feeling. The Iron Curtain had collapsed, and we saw that the peace prevailed again in Europe. Former Soviet countries were striving for democracy, the EU enlargement was proceeding, and all in all, the tensions between the East and West seemed to be lessening. It was a great time for a young diplomat. And I had a feeling that I was a part of something very, very fortunate. We were working together for a better world and better Europe. But now, unfortunately, many of those positive developments have turned backwards. Here in Zagreb, I started my service as ambassador of Finland 2.5 years ago in April 2021. It was in the middle of the pandemic. I met a lot of people wearing masks, and when we took the mask off, I did not recognize any face. It was a bit embarrassing, but that is how it was. I also cover relations to Bosnia and Herzegovina and to the Holy See, which, like you know very well here, is the papal administration of the Vatican city-state. Serving in Zagreb gives me an interesting point of view to whole Southeast Europe. And being accredited to the Holy See has opened for me doors that I did not know even exist. The Holy See is a very unique structure and something completely new for an ambassador coming from Finland, which is quite secular Lutheran country, like I will explain to you later on. I was invited to speak about the current political situation in Finland and how I see the ecumenical efforts of Pope Francis. I'm very happy to do that, but having studied history at the university, I take a few steps backwards before touching upon the theme. I would like to mention to you that this picture that you see over there has been taken in June in Rome. We have there Finnish Institute for Rome, specialized on research of antiquity, Latin language, the whole inheritance that we get from there. And under the same roof in the lovely Villa Lante, which is 500 years old building on Gianicolo, it's a column giving view to the Rome. We have there also the Embassy of Finland to the Holy See, although we did not have there a resident diplomat since 1951. So I'm covering our relations to the Holy See from here in Zagreb. Coming to Croatia, I have to say that I've been fascinated by the wonderful rich history you have in this country, deriving from the old Roman times and seeing with my own eyes the arena of Pula or the old town of Dubrovnik or any other historic monument your country has. It is simply incredible. We don't have anything like that in Finland. The oldest remaining buildings in my country are medieval stone churches which were built in late 13th century. Those buildings we had before that time, they were made of wood and they did not resist time. They have disappeared hundreds of years ago. As we are here at the Catholic University, I would like to mention that the Christian faith came to Finland around 1150, so close to 900 years ago. That time it was Catholic faith. It was hundreds of years before Martin Luther and the Reformation. According to the legend, the British Bishop Henrik, later Saint Henrik, was the missionary who taught the Christian faith to Finns. Again, according to the legend, he suffered a martyr death in Finland on the ice of Lake Köyliö, killed by a local farmer. Whether this is true or not, we don't know. There is no historical evidence of that, what happened and when, but we celebrate St. Henrik's Day every year on 19th of January. And around that day, an ecumenical delegation from Finland representing the Lutheran, Orthodox and Catholic communities travels together to Rome to celebrate St. Henrik's Mass. This is a very nice tradition that we have. Then coming back to Finland and how is it, Finland has always been a borderland between Sweden and Russia, between East and West. Before gaining independence in 1917, Finland had been a part of Sweden for centuries and a part of Russia for more than 100 years. But despite this geographic position as Russia's neighbor, Finland has always felt of being a part of the West. In the Middle Age, from the 14th century onwards, when there was no higher education available in Finland or in Sweden, Finland was that time a part of Sweden, my early countrymen studied at the universities of Paris, Leipzig, Wittenberg, Rostock. This gave a solid basis for the classical Western orientation of my country that time. And one of these students was Mikael Agricola. Later he was appointed the Bishop of Turku in 1545. He had studied in Wittenberg under Martin Luther, the Reformist, and he absorbed there the ideas of Reformation. He was an early actor in this field, probably not a very strict one, but this is how the Lutheran faith came to Finland. Also, it's worth mentioning that Mikael Agricola is so-called father of the Finnish literature. He was the first one to translate the Bible into Finnish language. He also wrote in Finnish, and he translated some other books into Finnish, and these books were the first printed books in Finland. Nowadays, the Evangelic Lutheran Church is the biggest church in Finland, with its 3.6 million members, which is about 70% of the total population of 5.5 million in Finland. The Evangelic Lutheran Church and the Orthodox Church are considered the national churches of Finland. The Orthodox community is much smaller, consisting about 60,000 persons, which is a bit more than 1% of the population. And the third religious community in Finland are Muslims, mainly today due to the immigration, but there is also an original Muslim population in Finland since the late 19th century. As I mentioned, Finland became independent in 1917 during the First World War. And Finland was able to maintain the independence also during and after the Second World War, although the sacrifices were hard. In addition to casualties and all suffering, we lost a big part of the territory, including Finland's that time biggest city, Viipuri or Viborg, like it is known internationally. The dominant post-war period feature of the Finnish politics was so-called neutrality policy, that Finland and some other European countries had chosen to balance between the two blocs, the US-led West and the Russia-led East. This neutrality meant in practice that Finland did not take a stance on political and military rivalry of the blocs, but strived to maintain a position in between, having trade with East and West, having relations to both directions, and even buying armament for the Finnish defense force equally from the East and from the West. This sounds odd today, but that was the reality at that time. What I want to underline regarding this post-war neutrality is that it was for Finland a way of surviving. With this neutrality policy, we succeeded in maintaining our independence and political freedom. Many other European countries did not manage as well. Our former long-time president, Urho Kekkonen, used to say that a small country like Finland should act more like a doctor than a judge in world politics. And this thinking realized in active participation in UN peacekeeping operations and peace mediation. Finnish blue helmets were a visible part of Finland's foreign policy, also in this part of the world. Since 1990s, Finnish peacekeepers have participated in operations also in Croatia, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and in Kosovo, where Finns are serving even today in the NATO-led KFOR troops. Another area where this doctor, not judge thinking realized was active support in peace building and confidence building. The best example, the best known example of this was the Conference on Security and Cooperation in Europe, which was organized in Helsinki in 1975. And later the OSCE, which is the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, was built on the results of the Helsinki Conference and the Helsinki Final Act. And like you know, nowadays the OSCE has its headquarters in Vienna. Today's Finland is known as a Nordic welfare country. Many consider, I often meet young Croats here, they say that Finland has succeeded quite well. Yes, that is true. We are happy about our achievements, but it's maybe good to remind that that has not always been the case. For Finland, coming out of poverty has been a relatively recent phenomenon. Roughly 100 years ago, when Finland was still a young nation, living its first years of independence, Finland was far from being a welfare state. Now you may ask, what are the keys to Finland's success? I would raise two, maybe three things. First, we have always felt being a part of the West, and we always did our best to integrate Finland to Western structures. This is a similar feature I see in Croatia. Second, education has been a cornerstone of building a better future for the citizens and especially for the young people. And maybe the third point, for Finland it has been very important to be a part of the Nordic countries. The Nordicness, being together with our Nordic friends, Sweden, Norway, Denmark and Iceland, it's kind of backbone in our thinking. And it has given us a solid group of friends to whom we can belong. Finland has been building its administration for more than 200 years. Since 1809, when Finland got an autonomous status as a part of the Russian Empire. Being a part of Russia, we still followed the Swedish administrative model that we had inherited during the centuries long time when Finland belonged to Sweden. And that was a key of that process. Also, I often hear in Croatia that people admire the Finnish school system. And yes, of course, Finnish schools are also suffering from lack of resources like schools in many other countries, but the basis is always the same, giving equal opportunities for each child. This is important. Equality and non-discriminatory for all kids, similar chances for all pupils, from elementary school to the university, not depending on the wealth of the family. Often when I meet young Croats, they seem to be impatient with the pace of development in the country. Then I remind that state building always takes time. It does not happen overnight. Finland has been doing its own state building and building of administration for more than 200 years. Croatia regained the independence in 1991, negotiated for the EU membership for 10 years, since 2003 to 2013, and meanwhile joined the NATO in 2009. And now, this summer, Croatia celebrated the 10 years of membership in the EU. I think that this pace has been astonishing, and you, with good reason, can be proud of it. If you look back at the Finnish history, the process my country has gone through may be logical, but it took much more time than in your case. And in Croatia, all the remaining steps in developing the state to fulfill your expectations are definitely easier than those ones you have taken during these 30 years. Like I mentioned, for Finland, a part of belonging to Western structures was key in the years of last century. Finland was a country establishing the Nordic Council in 1952. It was the same year when our capital, Helsinki, was hosting the Olympic Summer Games. Finland joined the United Nations in 1955, and then there were other steps regarding the economic integration, European Free Trade Association and so on. And finally in 1992, Finland applied for the EU membership and became an EU member state in 1995. And only 4 years later, 1999, Finland was having the first EU presidency. And since that, we have been chairing the Council of the European Union also in 2006 and 2019, and the last one back-to-back with the Croatian first EU presidency. I already mentioned something about being neighbor to Russia. Over the history, Finland has learned to carefully balance our foreign trade and security policy vis-à-vis the eastern neighbor. Because sharing a long common border, more than 1,300 kilometers, with Russia means that there have been a lot of very practical issues to deal with, related to border control, traveling, environmental issues, trade relations, and many other things. And we thought that we can manage the relations, and in fact we did for quite a long time. Then all this changed in the morning of 24th of February 2022, like I think that we all remember for the rest of the life this date. We saw that the neighboring Russia had become unpredictable and unreliable. And a direct consequence of that was that Finland made the decision to seek membership in NATO. It sounds a big change, yes it was, but in fact Finland had been working very closely with NATO since 1994 within the partnership program, so we were very much integrated into NATO structures. And then finally Finland joined the NATO in April this year. And we can say that already as a partner, Finland was as close to NATO as a country can be without being a full-fledged ally. Now we are, and I hope that also Sweden will follow soon. There are positive signs about this. It is typical for Finnish approach in international cooperation that we have always wanted to fully integrate in the structures we work with. This same applies to our UN membership, to OSCE, today with EU and NATO. We do not ask what EU or NATO could do for us, but rather the Finnish thinking runs in an opposite way. Finland wants to fully integrate into these structures and thinks that the benefits come that way. In NATO, Finland has already started positioning officers and civilian experts in NATO structures. This is a big burden. You know it here. Your representative, the Ministry of Defense and the Armed Forces have told that also in this country you had a big job in doing this. Well, this is what we are doing right now. Sweden, just like Finland, hopefully both of us are soon NATO members, we are remarkable strongholds in Northern Europe. Our military capacity strengthens NATO. The military capabilities exceed the resources that many older NATO countries have in form of jet fighters, navy vessels or artillery, just to mention. And Finland did never give up the conscript army. We have a remarkable trained reserve available in a possible crisis situation. We are security providers, not security consumers. Now, let me come back to the Nordic cooperation, and if you allow me, I will reveal a secret a bit later. Like I said, belonging to a like-minded group of close neighbors of Nordic countries has been tremendously important for Finland, and it still is, despite the very solid international position we have as an EU member state and as a NATO ally. With Sweden, Norway, Denmark and Iceland, we share a big part of our history. We have a common way of thinking, a similar lifestyle, and to some extent also a common language. Being a Nordic country, working together with other Nordics gives us big benefits both in our own region but also internationally. It was also always not as flourishing. It has not only been hygge is a Danish word meaning something very comfortable. We have had our troubles, but now today we are very close friends. Our prime ministers, our foreign ministers, defense ministers, other line ministers, they meet several times a year. We have very good people-to-people contacts and so on. And in fact, it's maybe worth mentioning, a few years ago, the Finnish and Swedish ministers of defense were joking that they meet each other more often than they meet their own moms. But probably that was also true. Of course, we have our differences. We still are fighting hard, but nowadays only at ice hockey rink, in cross-country skiing competitions, and especially at the Eurovision Song Contest. But more far from home we are, more united we are. We can speak with one voice at the UN meetings in New York or in Geneva, or at any other international forum. We are a very similar nation, and we deliberately keep up that image internationally. That is called country branding. Speaking about Scandinavian design, new Nordic cuisine, Nordic noir films and TV series, modern technologies, innovations, clean nature, it serves all of us. Now I see that somebody is thinking that the ambassador mentioned the secret he promised to relieve. Here it comes. When we Nordics meet, we often use our common language, which is called Scandinavian. We do it proudly, we promote it in international gatherings. And it's often funny to notice that other diplomats in international meetings, they are struggling. What are they speaking, and we don't understand anything. And to be honest, there is no such a language like Scandinavian. Using Scandinavian means that we can speak Swedish, which is also an official language in Finland, alongside Finnish, or Norwegian or Danish, and everyone understands more or less. But this is not the whole truth. A big number of Finns do not speak Swedish. Icelandic language is not understandable to any other Nordics. And spoken Danish has changed so rapidly over the last decades that Swedish and Norwegian speakers are struggling to understand. In written Danish there is no problem, but spoken Danish is something different. But for political reasons, to underline the unity of Nordics, we keep up these language issues, and it gives a feeling of cohesion. It's a good secret language in international meetings. We can change information that nobody understands. It serves us very well in international context. And in this region, you speak Croatian, Bosnian, Montenegrin, Serbian, other national languages. You underline the specificity of your own languages, but I have to say that although they are all different languages, they are much closer to each other than Swedish, Norwegian, and Danish. So please remember this next time when you meet Nordics speaking Scandinavian. The Vice Rector mentioned the name of President Martti Ahtisaari. He passed away some weeks ago at the high age of 86 years. He was a remarkable man. He served as the President of Finland from 1994 to 2000. He was a Nobel Peace Prize laureate from 2008. And prior to all that, he made a long career as diplomat, mainly at the UN. Ahtisaari was also an internationally known peace mediator. He also played some key roles in the pacification of the former Yugoslav territory. He was involved in the processes in Bosnia-Herzegovina, mainly in Kosovo, and that is he is most well known in this region. And he is remembered and appreciated, which I noticed when we had the Book of Condolences open at the Finnish embassy last week. Many of the signatories underlined the importance of his achievements in Southeast Europe and especially in Kosovo. Ahtisaari left an important legacy to all of us. His persistence in seeking peace and building confidence between the parties was priceless. In 2000, Ahtisaari established the Crisis Management Institute, called CMI, which continues his peace mediation work even today. There is much we all can learn from his work, and his inheritance is valuable, especially in the Western Balkans countries, where the tensions are still high, despite the fact that the war ended already a generation ago. And today, the CMI has become one of the biggest peace mediation centers in Europe. Let me now come back to what is serving as ambassador to the Holy See and to the ecumenical efforts of Pope Francis. Pope Francis is known for his support for the poor people, for the climate work, and protection of the biodiversity. In addition, this is interesting from my point of view, I'm following what they do also from the world politics angle. He has been actively building bridges between people recognizing different faiths. And he pays a lot of attention to the ecumenical work, especially to the interfaith dialogue he has with the Muslim world. In this region, you are well aware how religious differences can be a source of conflicts, and more importantly, which is more dangerous, religions are used as excuse to politically motivated tensions and hatred. I very warmly welcome Pope Francis' emphasis on ecumenism and interfaith dialogue. It also helps me as ambassador when I meet representatives of religious communities or parishes and ask how ecumenism and interfaith dialogue are seen in your work in your area. And always, always, always the answer is that the relations are good. And I believe that this is the case among ordinary people and the priests. They don't seek conflict, they just want to live their life in peace. But we have to be aware of the risks. External sources are trying to raise religion-based tensions and hatred, also via media, but especially via the social media. You all know, probably better than I, that the Pope and the Holy See have traditionally tried to remain neutral in conflicts. The Pope never mentions an aggressor by name, but tries to maintain relations to both parties of a conflict, also keeping for himself a position that he could serve as mediator in a conflict. This has been especially interesting in the context of the war Russia is waging against Ukraine. The first day after the Russian full-scale attack in February 22, the Pope himself went to the Russian embassy in Rome to meet the ambassador. What they discussed, it's not known, but the visit was quite extraordinary and sent a clear message. The Pope is actively trying to seek possibilities for peace in Ukraine. He has nominated Cardinal Matteo Zuppi to his special envoy, and Cardinal Zuppi has actively been in contact with Moscow and Kiev. His efforts are valuable, but we do not know if there is any progress foreseen. And this is typical. Very often in peace mediation processes, there is a media silence. Nothing is revealed until there is an agreement. And if there is no agreement, there are, of course, no news afterwards. The Holy See has been quite successfully supporting peace mediation in earlier years, especially in Americas and in Africa. And Cardinal Zuppi, who is now pending between Rome and Kiev and Moscow, he was also involved in the peace negotiations in Mozambique in 1992. This was one of the most famous success stories of the Rome-based community Sant'Egidio. This Sant'Egidio is known for working closely with the Holy See in peace mediation. And now, as you see, peace mediation can be done in many ways. The Holy See has traditionally spoken for peace and has a remarkable record in peace mediation between Chile and Argentina in 1979, between US and Cuba 2014, and in Mozambique 1992, like I mentioned earlier. Normally, this kind of peace-building processes are very long and very expensive. They can take several months or even years, and they cost enormous sums of money, which is of course not comparable to the cost of waging a war. This means that normally only big state-backed actors can work in this way. Norway, just to give an example, has been traditionally involved in this kind of long processes requiring diplomatic skills, patience, and solid financing. The CMI, established by Martti Ahtisaari, has become very active and successful peace mediation institution in Europe. And very often, independent actors are needed in peace mediation. As they do not represent any state, they are not considered stakeholders, and they are more free to bring their knowledge into peace-building processes. The CMI focuses on peace processes in Middle East, North Africa and Asia, and in Eurasia, in former Soviet republics and in their vicinity, and in sub-Saharan Africa. The CMI is paying special emphasis on gender issues and involvement of women in conflict resolution and peace processes. This is their niche. And you can imagine some big players do not bring in the same similar way the message of women's role in peace building, although it's crucially important for achieving a lasting and fair peace. Every crisis is unique, and the conflict resolution has to take into account the long historical, geographic and cultural context. There is no one-size-fits-all conflict resolution mechanism, and this is why independent peace-building institutions are needed in these processes. To conclude, I would like to say a few words about Finland and the Holy See. Although the Catholic Church has relations to Finland since 19 years, from the 12th century, the state-level relations are much shorter. I am representing the state-level relations. The churches in Finland have their church relations, and we support each other. The Holy See recognized Finland in March 1918, a few months after Finland had declared its independence. Then, later, diplomatic relations were established in 1942 during the Second World War. Since that, we had a resident diplomat accredited to the Holy See until 1951, and after that, Finland has covered the relations to the Holy See, mainly from Bern and Vienna, and now from Zagreb. And I visit Rome several times a year. There is a small Catholic community in Finland consisting about 25,000 lay people and about 30 priests. And just a month ago, we got news that Father Raimo Gojarola has been nominated to be the new bishop of the Diocese of Helsinki. Father Raimo is born Spanish, but he is a fluent Finnish speaker, and he has even taken a Finnish first name, Raimo, that he uses alongside his original name, Ramon. So, this was, in short, what I wanted to tell you. Thank you for participating. If you have any questions, I would be very, very happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you for this insightful lecture. My name is Jakub Žižić. I'm a political scientist. I work here at the Catholic University. So you spoke about this politics of neutrality, Finnish politics of neutrality during the Cold War.
Yeah.
So there are some people, some scholars, some authors, some intellectuals that see this your policy during the Cold War towards the Soviet Union, maybe even as a model for Ukraine.
Yeah.
So there is this issue of compromise, of avoiding conflicts. Really one expansionist neighbor. And how do you see this? Even some there is a similar situation even in Austria. There it was and still is, but the Finnish situation is much more similar to Ukraine. So how do you see this maybe idea for Ukraine to be neutral, to avoid, let's say, to make some compromises, even maybe to cede a territory like you did in 44, 45, when Soviet Union occupied. How do you see this maybe, this cooperation, and maybe to be this as a model for relations between Ukraine and Russia? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That is a very good question, and thanks for raising this. Like I mentioned, this neutrality policy was for Finland a way of surviving. I could even say that there was no other choice. And some people are raising this question that should Ukraine adopt the same policy, and my answer is no. We cannot recommend it to any nation. It was that time context, that time situation. We were living in a totally different world. What we did then was, I think, very clever way of staying outside conflicts between the big blocs, but for Ukraine there is no other choice than a lasting and fair peace. And if Finland lost big parts of the territory after the Second World War, it was a very painful process, and we do not wish it to any other country. Thanks for raising this issue. It's very important that you ask about it. And my answer and the answer that Finnish politicians give is that no, this is not a solution for Ukraine and Russia. Ukraine must get back its territory and gain a fair and lasting peace. Thank you. Excellent question.
Thank you. Thank you for the lecture. I would like to ask you, what is the Finnish stance regarding the migrant crisis in the European Union? And a related question, would you think that it would be a good and neutral or a bad thing for Finland if Finland gets a large Muslim community living there in the following years? Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's very sad situation, this migrant crisis. These people who have been forced to leave their homes, they do it because they do not see any future in their own countries, or they are gravely endangered in their own homes. So why they leave? Because they are in a very, very difficult situation. We had been receiving migrants to Finland, like all other countries in Europe, but to lesser number than many others because we are so far in the north. However, 2015, we received quite a big number of migrants coming from Russia. That was a test ball from Russian side. You know that Russian external border is very carefully guarded, and nobody can get even close to the border without the approval of the Russian authorities. So that was definitely intentional thing from the Russian side, that they let people come to the border and even probably encourage people to do so. So we have seen this, and we have taken a big number of refugees and migrants coming. The key issue is how we can make them start a normal life in our countries. They have to learn the language, they have to get a job, they got to get their kids to the school. If we do not manage in this, then we are in big problems, like we have seen in countries where there are people who have not been able to start a new life in the countries where they're residing. I don't know, I don't want to say if it's a problem or not, depending on the religious basis of these people, but it's a problem regarding whomever comes to Finland if they don't find a place in the country. A good example are these Ukrainians who have come to Finland. Many of them who came to Finland, they had been working in Finland in agriculture, so they knew where they were coming to, and they started quite easily a new life in Finland. Of course, the language issue is very difficult, especially for the children.
Just if you know, what are the public health problems that Finland is at this time struggling with? Yeah,
we have been renewing our public health service, and it has been a very, very difficult process. Several governments in row have been working on it, and it seems to be extremely expensive. So we have so-called welfare areas in Finland. The city of Helsinki, the capital, is its own region, and then there are several other so-called welfare regions, and they are short of money, short of labor. There's a lack of nurses and doctors, and we have extremely expensive, shiny, fine new hospitals, but we don't have enough of people, personnel to keep these surgeries or whatever running. So this is lack of resources and skyrocketing prices of everything.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Just according to the question, Finland has about 1.5 million inhabitants, right?
Yeah, 5.5, yeah.
5.5. Not the same, but similar to Croatia. And maybe just a few words about, because we have a demographic problem in Croatia, a lot of people getting abroad and demographics increase. So what is actually the situation in Finland about demographics, and according also to the question of the colleague with immigration politics?
Yeah, that is also a very good question. Thank you very much. I had a minister visiting Croatia some time ago, and I was asked to write a briefing paper for the minister, and then there was a question that what are the similarities between Finland and Croatia, and first I thought there is not much. But then I thought twice and noticed that there are a lot of similarities. You are 4 million something, we are 5.5. You have a lot of forests like we do, you have a long coastline like we do, you have a lot of sparsely populated areas just like we do. Tourism is an important factor in your state economy just like for us. You have very well educated labor just like we do in Finland. So there are many similarities between our countries, and it should be easier for Finnish companies to come here and start their businesses and so on. We are also having problem with labor, and the Finnish government, the last government, previous government launched a program which was called Talent Boost, which meant that we should attract labor to come to Finland to work in key sectors. And my answer was, no, don't even try to get anybody from Croatia because this country is having similar problems. But the better way is to seek partners in Croatia, establish sister companies here, because you have great labor force, price is a bit lower than in Finland, and so on. So normally when people don't want to come to Finland to work, there are two reasons: living expenses and the climate. Whereas why people come to Croatia, there are two reasons. There are the living expenses and the climate. The same, but in a positive way. Demography, yes, we are having this problem. People are getting older. We should have a lot more immigration to keep the country running. The current government is hesitant in this. There has been questions that should we contrary limit the number of people who come to work in Finland and to live all in all. So yes, this is we are struggling with exactly the same problems like you do. Although the difference is that from our country people are not moving away to work, but the number of people it would be going down if we did not have immigration. In your case, many people are moving to Germany or Austria, wherever to work.
I'm former rector of the Zagreb University, and my question is addressed to the, let's say, similar with demography and getting people more older, old and old. And how in science, how do you cope with let's say, working span period of life? How do you, when you send people to the pension, and do you allow scientists to stay, or how do you have you in fact enough scientists to keep your science be competitive with the rest of Europe or in the world?
Yeah, the age of retirement has been increasing all the time.
Is that compulsive, or
it's both voluntary and compulsory. So the age where people can leave their jobs and be retired is higher and higher all the time, and it's also it affects the level of the salary. So, for instance, I can go to the Finnish pension system and check that I could get retired at the age of 65 and 8 months or something, and then I would get that much of salary, but if I work 2 years more, I would get more salary, and if I work until the age of 70 years, or actually it's today, it's 69 years and 364 days, so 70 years minus 1 day, then I would get even that. So there are this system to guide people to work later, longer work careers. Yeah, this is a problem, and we are constantly discussing who will pay our pensions when we get older.
Yes, you see, as my comment, we are similar in that way, but our politics are totally different. They force people to go to the pension and then overload the pension system.
We had to same.
I was forced to go to the pension with 70 years, although I played tennis with 50s. Yeah. No, we had a similar situation in Finland about 20 years ago. So there was a system where 55 years old people were guided to early pension, so that they got prolonged unemployment reimbursement, and then later to salary. Yeah, we have been through that same. Yeah. Unfortunately, we are not through that. We lack a lot of people we cannot find people to work in medicine.
Yeah.
Even in science, even only in few sectors there is enough, but others is not, and the politics doesn't understand it.
Yeah.
Just a comment.
The last.
For example, the last one. I was very fascinated with the number of people in Finland who is continuing the education. 66% of people continuation of the higher degree and higher education. That's a very big number. Do you know maybe how many people finishing the higher education or graduated the high schools?
I have no idea.
Is it the same or it is the less?
I don't know. Frankly, I don't know those figures. Maybe my colleague.
Unfortunately, not off my head.
Yeah.
I have heard on one radio emission also on education, because we have also this problem that people are starting to continue the education, but they don't get the end of the education.
Yeah, that is. We have the same problem. Yeah.
From several reasons.
Yeah.
But it's although in these days with economics and politics is the case that people are.
I recognize we have the same problem, but I absolutely don't know those figures. Yeah.
Okay,
thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm here with my colleague Samuel Graves from the embassy. He brought some brochures there on the table that you are just looking at. Please feel free to take them. If there is anything you would like to know about Finland or cooperation between Finland and Croatia, feel always free to contact the Embassy of Finland. You will find all our contact information on our web pages.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your lecture and for your answers. Samo da kažem, hvala puno svima koji ste došli. Naš sljedeći susret je 22. studenog u isto vrijeme na istom mjestu i sljedeći gost je veleposlanik Irske, Rory Mark Darling. Hvala vam i hvala što slušate.